the Reds are headed back to Cincinnati with the top 25 healthiest players in the organization. I'll tell you how it shakes out and when we can expect some injured players to make their debuts.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Reds with myself, Jeff Carr. I am a lifelong Cincinnati Reds fan that has turned an addiction to this team into information for you. I want to thank you for making time out of your day to listen to me talk some Reds with you. I encourage you to join me in a Reds conversation. If you're watching here on YouTube, put anything in the comments section. Helps out the algorithm, helps other people find the show, but also I love seeing your comments as well. You can also hit me up on X at Jeff Carr with 3 Fs if you're listening on your favorite podcast platform. If you are, by the way, make sure you hit subscribe. Going to be with you all throughout the season. We're only 3 days away from opening day, only 3 days away from the best day of the year. I think it's better than Christmas. I really do. I absolutely love opening day. And speaking of the number 3, I think the best number 3 in Cincinnati Reds history might surprise you for one or two or multiple reasons. We're also going to talk about the fact, so I mentioned 25 of the healthiest players. Well, there's supposed to be 26 man on the roster. So who's going to be that 26th man? I'm going to tell you why I think it should probably be Mr. Outside Hire. And what we will start with today will be the 25 players that the Reds have tabbed for opening day as we kind of break down the rotation, how that's going to shake out, and maybe a couple of injured guys and when we can expect them back. Before we get into all of that, I wanted to let you know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And where we will get started today is with this roster because the Reds have basically set their opening day roster. There's only one spot. We'll get to the remaining spot coming up here soon, but we can talk about 25 of the 26 players that we will see and we will hear their names announced on opening day. We'll kind of break this down. There's really only one guy that surprised me on this opening day roster, but it was a good surprise. I'm happy to be surprised by his inclusion here, but everybody else kind of makes sense based on the injuries and kind of in the suspension to Noelvi Marte. It kind of backed the Reds into a corner that these 25 guys are it. I mean, really, when you look at what else is in the organization, it's not a lot. And then there's some non-roster invitees that maybe you can squint really hard and see them taking that last spot on the bench, but I'm not enthused by them. And these are what the Reds now have to look forward to, at least until they get some guys back. Your catchers, Tyler Stephenson and Luke Maile. And that hasn't changed. Basically, since Curt Casali got hurt last year, that's been your two catchers, never been in doubt. Then you go to your infield. You've got Christian Encarnacion Strand, Jonathan India, Elly De La Cruz, Jeimer Candelario. I expect that to be the everyday four. You're looking at first base for CES, second base for India, shortstop for Elly De La Cruz, and third base for Candelario. And then you have Santiago Espinal backing him up, and you also have Nick Martini as a rotational first baseman, probably gets a lot more looks at DH and maybe a little bit in the outfield as well. David Bell has said that Jonathan India will still get tiny looks in the outfield. I seriously doubt. I think he's going to play a lot more second base this year. It's something that we talked about probably a couple of weeks ago when it was like, geez, is he going to play second base at all? And now, as we await the update from Matt McLain and from the team about Matt McLain, it sounds like Matt McLain's probably going to miss a very significant portion of this season, if not all of it, which is a significant bummer. And I hate to hear that, but this is why it kind of works out that the Reds didn't trade Jonathan India after there were a lot of people that thought that was going to happen. So that it works out that he still remains in the fold. Then you go into the outfield. They are listing Spencer Steer strictly as an outfielder. He may play on the infield some little tiny bit, but the Reds traded for Santiago Espinal because David Bell scared the crap out of Nick Krall by saying that he's like, yeah, Spencer Steer's our backup shortstop right now. And Nick Krall's like, oh, no, sir. and went and he got Espinal, which, I mean, Espinal's fine at shortstop. He's not an amazing shortstop, but I'm sure he's better than Spencer Steer. And we want Spencer Steer to play left field, because if Spencer Steer's not playing left field, you have 3 outfielders on this team. Currently, the other 3 are Jake Fraley, Will Benson, and Stuart Fairchild. That's it. That's all the outfielders you got. So so Spencer Steer has to be an outfielder for the majority of this season, at least until TJ Friedel comes back, which that's not likely until I'm telling you, it's not going to happen until June. At the very least, it's at the most optimistic, right after Memorial Day. I think it's probably more like mid to maybe like the 3rd week in June is when we see him make his regular season debut for the Reds. So that's what the outfield is. And then you go into the pitching staff. The starting rotation is set with Frankie Montas, Hunter Greene. You've got Nick Martinez, who's going to make the 3rd start of the season. Then you have Andrew Abbott and Graham Ashcraft. Now, Nick Lodolo will slot into that, but he's not going to be along until at least, I'm thinking it's April 11th. Initially, we heard April 10th, but the way that the rotation is shaking out, for the first couple of series of the season, the Reds are going to be able to give their starters 6 days rest because of the 2 off days. The 2 off days that kind of buoy the Philadelphia series. Because there's this weird thing where the Reds are home for 3 games, then they go to Philadelphia for 3 games, and then they come back home for 6 games. Whatever, that's fine. But because of that, they're able to finagle this, give everybody 6 days off without actually having 6 men in the rotation. So, if you bring him back April 10th, then you push Hunter Greene back again. Or, I think what's probably likely to happen is they bring him back April 11th, move Nick Martinez to the bullpen, because that would be Nick Martinez's 3rd start. And we've always said that the best version of this pitching staff is with Nick Martinez coming out of the bullpen for, long stints, or he can be like a spot starter for you or something like that. I think that's probably when we'll see Nick Lodolo is April 11th. And then we go into the bullpen. We've got, obviously, Alexis Diaz, Emilio Pagan, Lucas Sims, Brent Suter, Buck Farmer, Justin Wilson, who they just signed just last week. And then there's 2 guys, and one of them isn't super surprising, in Fernando Cruz, because I've been telling you he deserves this appointment. I've been telling you he deserves a roster spot. And then TJ Antone, very excited, surprised to see him on this opening day roster, because we know the talent. We know how good he has been in the past. We also know the injury struggles that he has gone, and there is no other word for it. He has struggled with that second Tommy John surgery. And I admire the hell out of the fact that he is on this opening day roster, because it not only says that he was good enough, but it also says that the Reds believe he is healthy enough. And that might even be more important, because I don't have a question of his talent. I have a question of his durability. He hasn't shown it. My lasting image of him from last season was he had an outing where he had to leave the outing. He only threw like a handful of pitches, and then he had to leave. And the only report that we got out of that was elbow fatigue. And that is never a good thing if you're a pitcher. But I'm glad to see him on this opening day roster. I hope that he returns to form, because this bullpen is pretty good, even without TJ Antone returning to form. If he can return to form and the Reds have 2 closers, that's pretty good. And speaking of the bullpen, Sam Maul obviously will begin the season on the injured list. The report was he isn't ready, needs to continue to work up to being ready for regular season pitching. I think we probably see him around April 8th. I think they probably give him 1, 2, maybe 2 or 3 series before we see him. So it could be April 8th, the beginning of the home series against the Milwaukee Brewers is when Sam Maul gets here. But this is what the Reds have. We go from the whole report that they got like 10 or 11 starters, the bench is going to be super strong, to this is what they got. And, oh, by the way, if you're counting, they're down 1. So what happens with that 1? I'm going to tell you why that 1 should be Mr. Outside Hire. FanDuel is the best way to enjoy the season. As we move toward opening day, you should get on FanDuel. Go to FanDuel.com/lockedon right now, and you can get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. As the tournament is rolling along, of course, the tournament's kind of taking a few days break here. What a wild weekend that first weekend of the tournament was. And as we're moving through the women's tournament, as baseball's getting here, NBA's in the stretch run, so many great things are happening, and FanDuel is the best place to take advantage of your sports knowledge with money lines, point spreads, over-unders, prop bets, and more. Same game parlays. Seriously, if you turn on the television, you find a game, you're not sure if where your loyalties lie on that, go on FanDuel. You can make it a little bit extra fun for yourselves. Or you can check out the futures. The futures that FanDuel have, I love the different individual stats that they've got right now. They have the over-under on homers for Spencer Steer this season set at 21.5. I think that's about right, but I think he's going to hit 23. I just feel it. I think 23 homers for Spencer Steer is how he ends this season. So I say take the over. I know. Surprise, right? Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon, and you can get in on all of the action, whether it be the tournament, whether it be Major League Baseball, all the great stuff that is going on. That's at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Thanks as always for making Locked On Reds your first listen every single day. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Do you have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team, every day. And coming up on the next Locked On Reds podcast, Steve and my schedule is a little funky these last couple of days. Me solo today. Steve is going to be solo tomorrow. He's going to give you his thoughts on this roster because as the roster was set like over the last 3 days, we were texting each other a lot. We're like, man, what's this? TJ Antone? He's making the opening day roster? I kind of love it. It's kind of fun. But what about this open spot? There's 25 guys, but you're supposed to have 26. The Reds aren't going to do the thing where they play shorthanded on opening day, are they? No, they're not. But the Reds need to look outside the organization for the 26th man. But that might actually kind of be a little bit difficult. I'll tell you why. Firstly, let's look at what's in-house, what the Reds could use, or who could be the 26th man. Number one, it's got to be an outfielder. And it can't be a pitcher. It has to be a position player. But it's got to be an outfielder. The Reds have 4 outfielders. Like I said, if there is a game that Spencer Steer happens to be playing on the infield, you now have 3 outfielders. And don't give me Jonathan India. The Reds were going to try that because he didn't have a position. Now he does. That's where he should play. And if he's not playing second base, he should play DH. That's kind of where I'm at with this. Like, I know we were doing the whole, well, he's working at first base. He's working at left field. You know, we could see Jonathan India even be more valuable to this team if he plays a pretty decent left field and hits like Jonathan India can hit. There's no need for that now. Because I'm pretty sure, and as much as I hate to say it, the fact that there's been no news and the fact that all we've heard is that Matt McClain went to get a second opinion from a surgeon in California who is a well-respected surgeon, Dr. Neil Elatrosh. But the fact that he's done that, and that's all that's been reported, I don't know that I'm going to love what's next, and I don't think you will either. So, Jonathan India is going to play second base. That's where we want him. So the Reds need another outfielder. So who's left? Jacob Hurtubise has been getting time. Bubba Thompson has been getting some playing time here late in spring training. And as we always tell you, it's who's playing where, when is a very important thing. Spring training has a lot of weirdness to it. And don't give me, are you worried about this? I'm not worried. Nothing about spring training performances worries me. Likewise, nothing about spring training performances that are really, really good gets me super excited for what the player's going to do this season. Now, I'm happy that that player, whoever it is, with crazy statistics, comes into opening day with lots of confidence. That's a good thing. But I'm not going to sit here and say, because player had X amount of average during the spring training slate of games, he's going to do this well during the regular season. Doesn't work like that. Got a lot of Norris Hoppers and Neftali Sotos and Patrick Kivlehans and DT Cromers to tell you about, who just murdered the ball in spring training and never did anything in the regular season. And I've got plenty of spring trainings where people were like, what is wrong with Joey Votto? Well, you know what was wrong with Joey Votto? Absolutely nothing. So I'm not worried about that. But the whole, like, where they're playing, when they're playing, and all that good stuff, that means something. The fact that Hurtubise and Bubba Thompson have still seen time here recently, even though they were cut and they were sent to minor league camp a little over a week ago. The Reds were saying, okay, we're working out for our 26-man spot. Don't love either one of those options. Bubba Thompson, in his career, has not been a good hitter. He plays good defense. And maybe that's what you go with here. But Jacob Hurtubise, I just don't know. I mean, he's never played in the majors. Barely played above single A. I know he's got time at double A, but don't. And likewise with spring training stats, minor league stats do not compare to the major leagues. So I'm not going to go crazy about what they might be, what the splits are. I know he's a left-handed hitter, so that doesn't really fill in here. But at this point, we're looking for a 26-man, and that's kind of what we need. I don't necessarily know that we can be too picky. The only pickiness that the Reds should be is he needs to be an outfielder. So those are the two guys in system. That's why I say go look elsewhere. Go bring somebody in. There's a big stipulation to that, though, because they have to have been in camp with another team. That means if you're looking at the free agent list right now, stop. Because we're seeing that with other teams who brought in free agents in the last week or last 2 weeks, and they're saying he still needs more time. He's not ready yet. In fact, the Blue Jays are doing that with Joey Votto. That's why if you see or if you hear people talking about, oh man, Joey Votto's okay accepting an assignment to AAA Buffalo for the Blue Jays, that's weird. He's doing that because the Blue Jays are telling him that they're going to bring him up when they feel he's ready. Now, the other thing about that is he has an ankle injury right now. Joey Votto's dealing with an injury. Does that sound familiar? It's something he's been doing the last couple of years. But the point is he's not ready. If the Reds go and they sign a free agent outfielder, that guy will need some time to ramp up at AAA, in the minor league camp, whatever, before they can get him on the roster. So you go sign a free agent right now, he's not going to be ready for opening day. And you're still in the situation where you give a spot to Hurtubise or Thompson at least for a week. I bet they probably would take 2 or 3 weeks to get ready, being that they were free agents. So it's got to be somebody who was in camp with someone else. And that really limits you. Because I was combing through the roster transactions from other teams to see who was cut. Let me tell you what, there ain't no, and there's no one. There's nobody that I saw get cut from another team. Miles Straw, maybe, but I think, and probably by the time I say this, he's probably either going to be claimed or signed by somebody else. If he's claimed, then the Reds are on the hook for 3 more years of his contract and $20 million. I don't think they're going to do that, because I think that that's going to look kind of weird to the rest of the outfield. You really just need somebody to fill that last spot on the bench. And Miles Straw is a guy that would push for playing time. He'd push TJ Friedl. And I don't necessarily know that that's a bad thing, but I think this late in the camp, you're introducing a variable into this locker room that is not, I don't think that's a good idea. I think they're just looking for depth at this point. Somebody to sit on the bench, and somebody that if they need to call on late in the game, maybe for a pinch hit or a pinch run or, defensive replacement, whatever, that's the guy they're looking for. They're not looking for a game changer. They're not looking for a guy who could possibly start. And Miles Straw's that guy. And if he makes it to free agency, he's likely to get an actual deal from somebody. I don't necessarily know that the Reds, I mean, maybe he only gets a 1-year deal. That would be the only thing, the only caveat. I don't know. I just don't see that happening. I've had a couple of folks ask me about Miles Straw, and I don't see that being a possibility. But I think that the Reds should probably make a trade here. They did this with Espinal. They made a good deal where they traded a minor league pitcher who was way down on their minor league depth chart for a pretty decent bench guy in Santiago Espinal. Maybe they can find that deal. Maybe Nick Krall can find that deal. It's not like we knew he was going to be able to find Santiago Espinal before he made that trade, so maybe he's got something else up his sleeve. But I really do believe that the Reds' 26th man cannot be given to a player that's currently in-house and expect the season to get off to a roaring start, because that's what we're talking about here. And I know the whole idea of starting fast took a huge hit with all the injuries. So now we're just kind of like, okay, maybe be 500, maybe tread water here. But even asking this team to be 500 is something that they just haven't done under David Bell to start a season. And I don't necessarily, and I'm not saying because, I mean, it sounds like I just criticized David Bell with that. It's just the fact of the matter is, while he's been the team's manager, they haven't started off the season very hot. I don't necessarily think that's his fault. And this year, this is going to be interesting because there's all the expectations in the world on this team, because there's all the hype around this talent. There's so many players on this team that can make it good that I think that they could hang on to 500. I don't think that's an unreasonable expectation at all. But you can't have a black hole at the end of the bench. So I think they need to go elsewhere and look for that. You know, we're 3 days away from opening day, and the best number 3 may surprise you for 1 or 2 reasons. I'll tell you why coming up next. The best way to check out television, if you're cutting the cord, you got to check out Fire TV, because Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend of baseball, like this weekend, or the college basketball tournament that continues this weekend, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us here at Locked On, and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into all of the game analysis, highlights, and more, and to keep you up to date on all the latest in the world of sports, March Madness, NBA, MLB, and lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos. Who doesn't love a cooking video? You know I do. I mean, you've got so much that you can check out on the Fire TV channels. And you can do that on the Fire TV app, on Fire TV stick, Alexa devices, all that good stuff. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/lockedonfiretv. Join the Locked On Reds Insiders today. I have a revamped program for this season, and I want you to become an insider. For $4.99 a month, you will become a smarter Reds fan and get all of the latest updates before everybody else. Text Insider to 513-597-0944 and get a free 14-day trial to see if you like it. Again, Insider 513-597-0944 for a free 14-day trial of Locked On Reds Insiders. All right, we are 3 days away. It's almost here. But when Tommy Thrall ended the final spring training game radio broadcast by saying, all right, that's it. We're shutting down the lights here in Goodyear and we're heading back to Cincinnati. So excited. This season is going to be so much fun, and opening day is no different. And with it 3 days away, we've been doing this series sporadically where we're counting down the days and we're looking at jersey numbers. So when we look at the number 3, the best is obvious. It's Ken Griffey Jr. Now, this might surprise you for one of two things, or maybe it's both. I don't know. But did you even remember that he wore that number? He switched from the number 30 to the number 3 in 2006. He wore the number 3 for 2006, 2007, 2008. And you might have remembered that, and that's cool. But you probably remember him more for being hurt than for being good. I think it's interesting because when he came here, there were insane expectations. And we do this all the time with baseball players. Steve and I talk about this all the time, right? We're putting too high expectations on Hunter Greene. We're putting too high expectations on Elly De La Cruz or Matt McClain or somebody. We're not appreciating them for who they are. And that's what happened with Griffey. You may understand him to be a disappointment as a Red. And you're comparing him to what he was as a Mariner. And if you're doing that, then you're not wrong. As a Mariner, he was one of the best players ever. Period. That player, if that version, you talk about multiverses or whatever, if that version of Ken Griffey Jr. continued through his career, he breaks all of the home run records. He holds them. Because for his 13 years in Seattle, I think it was 13. Did I look that right? But, for his time in Seattle, he had an OPS plus of 144. We talk about OPS plus a lot on this show. If you don't know, OPS plus is a all-encompassing number that talks about a value, the value of a hitter, with 100 being league average, which meant for his entire time in Seattle, which was no small sample size whatsoever, he was 44% better than league average. That's what we thought we were getting whenever the Reds traded for him. What we got for 9 years was an OPS plus of 122, which is still really good. It's only, it just happens to be 22% worse than what he was as a Mariner. And that's where everybody kind of gets hung up on it. I mean, if you even look at his career numbers with the Reds, in 9 years with the Reds, he had a slash line of 270, 362, 514. It's a damn good hitter. He had getting my numbers mixed around. 210 home runs in 9 years. That's good. That we hope that some of the players on this team right now put together that kind of production. And now it's easy to say, yeah, we hope that they become Ken Griffey Jr., but I'm just saying we hope that they become the Reds version of Cincinnati, or of Ken Griffey Jr., of the Cincinnati Kid, right? If they become the Mariners version, then hell yeah, I'm into that. But even just, if we have some guys that have a slugging percentage of 514, this team's going to be so good. And when you look at the other players that wore the number 3, there's not really a lot of competition here. With all due respect to the Willie Tavares of the world and the Patrick Kiblahans and the Freddie Galvises, Albert Almora and Matt Reynolds, Ryan Friel even wore the number 3 for 1 year. And don't give me D'Angelo Jimenez. Don't do it. And I love Pokey Reese. And I know he's going to be Grand Marshal of the opening day parade in 3 days. And I started with him. But there's just no way that his hitting statistics, given his prowess in the field, given his gold gloves, there's just no way that stands up to Ken Griffey Jr. The number 3. And I'm gonna segment that out. You forget for a moment, just for the sake of this argument, forget for a moment the rest of Ken Griffey Jr.'s career. The 3 years, and not all 3 of them were full seasons because of injuries. 2007 was, 2006 and 2008 weren't. But just those 3 years of Ken Griffey Jr. was better than any other Red that wore the number 3. I'd be interested in your thoughts on this. If you're with me here, hit me up in the comments section on YouTube or hit me up on Twitter. I mean, kind of feels like Griffey doesn't have any competition here. Ivan De Jesus, Cesar Esturez, Chris Valleca. Scooter Gennett maybe has an argument, but I don't even think so. You know, with all due respect to the Estelle Crabtrees of the world and the Jim Bottomleys, just no, it's Griffey. It's Griffey. But like I mentioned, 3 days away to opening day. I cannot wait. We got a lot of great stuff coming for you, including a big time episode on opening day to get you ready for the season, to get you ready for opening day, get you ready as a whole. We're going to have a couple of special guests on with us. So make sure that you keep it locked on, Reds. You keep it here all the time. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you've got your bell clicked on YouTube to get your notifications whenever we've got new content for you, because we're going to be with you all throughout the season, every single day. And Steve will be with you tomorrow. Like I said, our schedule's got a little funky here, but Steve will be with you solo tomorrow. He wasn't with me today. I won't be with him tomorrow, but we'll be back with you in your feed on Wednesday. And you can trust that we'll be locked on Reds in between that and every single day, because we're locked on Reds every single day.